Freedom's answer. What's the question? You're listening to Ernest Hancock.
Don't stop me now. I'm having such a good time. I'm having a ball. Don't stop me now. If you wanna have
Hey, we're back here on Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock. I want to make sure that we are understanding this. This is new information for me and a lot of other people, and I want to follow this through. And thanks to Lieutenant Eric Shine for doing this, lterickshine.org. And 8 years, man. I mean, who are you dealing with on the other side? Who's his prosecuting attorney? What's their responses to your information? The fact that you have a website and you've been doing videos, you've been coming out, you go to the Freedom Summit, you're talking to people, you're sharing this information. Have they go, shut up, boy? You know, I mean, what's been going on?
Well, that's part of, they've actually included in the court proceedings and stuff. But the lieutenant who brought the charges against me I sued the shipping companies and the union in federal district court. They convinced the Coast Guard and Homeland Security to bring a counter complaint against me, pull me into what is clearly a military tribunal. For doing this, the lieutenant, his name is Christopher Triboulet in the U.S. Coast Guard, for doing this, they sent him away to law school at Hastings. He got his law degree, got promoted, went to JAG officer training school, was trained as a prosecutor by the very judge sitting on the case right now. His name is Lieutenant Commander Walter J. Brzezinski, and Brzezinski is involved in Iran and all kinds of other stuff. You wouldn't even believe how dirty these guys are. But Lieutenant Triboulet was promoted to Lieutenant Commander, comes back as the JAG officer 5 years later, and takes back over the case as they've held on to me for 5 years.
Wow.
Oh, no, you wouldn't believe. And then an important point, the judge, the first judge recused himself, and this is not a real judge. He's a member of the executive branch. He's a member of a special branch of military who is carrying on these proceedings, and they're doing it under quote-unquote civil law that's being applied by a branch of military. The first judge recused himself. I motioned for his recusal. He refused to recuse himself. He went ahead and carried out a contingent motion for summary judgment, ruled on it, and declared me to be medically, mentally incompetent. I was forced to file my own appeal on the issue that I was not provided a due process hearing. They went ahead and held on to it for a couple of years, sent it back, remanded it to him to hold a due process hearing, and then he goes ahead and recuses himself only then, several years later. This new judge comes in, Walter J. Brzezinski, who happens to be a lieutenant commander in the Coast Guard, who was hired by the Coast Guard as a prosecutor from Virginia. Gee, I wonder what else is in Virginia. He was a state prosecutor or whatever, assistant prosecutor. He gets hired as a direct commissioned officer, is commissioned into the Coast Guard, and then he's training Lieutenant Commander Christopher Triboulet as a prosecutor. He comes in and takes over the case, but this judge has also ruled on cases like Rendon versus TSA, where they can impose a $700 fine upon you for cursing in an airport. He upheld it. It was a totally trumped-up case where it was a TSA employee that they went after. This has been converted in the Fifth or Sixth Circuit to where now it's been upheld that if you curse in a public utility, like even on the highway, you get pulled over by a police officer, they're part of this quote-unquote public transportation system, or in a rail or on an airline, they can fine you $700. Okay,
this is one thing that I want to know. In the process of this, have they been able to get some case law that they're starting? I can see what's happening. They're wanting to incorporate their authority with a uniform in these tribunals and military mixing up with civil, we can get you, okay? Have they had precedents set yet to where they can refer to them and say, yep, we did it over here, we're doing it again? Has that happened?
They're saying that this is a case of first impression on two grounds. Two different vice admirals from the Coast Guard Commandant, when they went up on Commandant's decisions on appeal, where I appealed the lower, rulings and stuff, they have ruled that this is a case of first impression twice now on different grounds.
First impression, what does that mean?
It's case precedents. They're creating the case precedents here and now.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. And you're hearing about it real time.
So where does this end?
Well, and that's why I've come to you. This isn't just about me. This is about all of us, because they're trying to, and I fully understand because of my training what's going on, and because of who I am and You know, I had a private parochial education. I had good foundational education. And I went to a United States Federal Military Service Academy, a $300,000 education, all paid for by you, the taxpayer, so that I could defend the Constitution and the American people. And that's what I'm trying to do. But I'm having a hard time because I'm doing it on my own right now, and I've been trying to get out. I wouldn't say on my own. I mean, I had James Corbett. He's had me interviewed, and a lot of people have interviewed, and you're interviewing me now trying to get this information out. My greatest concern, though, is that this information needs to be disseminated and well understood and researched by other people so that if anything should happen to me, God forbid, that other people can understand it and stand against it and confront it for what it is.
What is it?
Well, it's fascism. It's the militarization of the Coast Guard and the imposition of martial law upon American citizens.
What should we watch out for? What is it that we need to be careful of? Because I can see this expanding. You know, a lot of times actions such as yours, people such as you, are kind of holding actions. And what happens, we dealt with this starting in December of 2002 when they started doing the checkpoints near Tucson. We have checkpointusa.org.com, I think it's .org. You know, Checkpoint USA, Terry Bressi, a gentleman that's he's an astronomer at a University of Arizona that travels between Kitt Peak, the observatory in the mountains, back and forth. And you can see on the Indian reservation, they're doing testing. I mean, they had every single federal department there that there was, and they're just illegal as heck. Sued him. He wins. Well, only Ninth Circuit wins. But it doesn't matter. They're going to keep doing what they're doing. So I can see that everything that Mark Victor is my partner on the Freedom Summit, is a criminal defense attorney here, and he went through and just showed everything that they were doing wrong, how they were doing it wrong, why it didn't apply. You know, oh, you were supposed to this and you didn't, and you're blah, 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 blah. And that's exactly what you're doing. You know, it's like they're going to school. In fact, they send JAG officers, make them JAG officers, sending them to law school, come back later and said, we're back. And this is what you're doing. It's like you're training them, but I'm wondering for what?
Well, I haven't set out to train these guys.
Oh, you are?
I've set out to confront them and oppose them and stop them from what they're doing.
No, I understand, but that's, you know how they're going to make use of this information.
Well, but if they think about this, think about the charges. A, they're saying I'm a civilian. B, they're a branch of military. They're using a gavel as a weapon held by a branch of military and focusing it on civilians. They're using a court. They're not just using, you know, this isn't Tiananmen Square. This is more subversive. This is more covert. This is more stealth than actually coming out in the street with weaponry, because they're actually using our own court system, our own laws, the things that are supposed to protect us, even the systems of due process like our courts, against us as a weapon.
Yeah. And so what do you think the end result is in your case? Where are you at now?
Well, now, and mysteriously enough or oddly enough, these issues are transferred to the National Transportation Safety Board, an independent civilian agency that is going to rule on the appellate issues of a branch of military that is deciding civilian affairs, whether an individual is medically or mentally incompetent or not. And think about this. This goes to my license as a marine engineer, professional license. So tie that into, say, your doctor's license, your lawyer's license, your driver's license, and how broad this precedence really is.
I have complete understanding. You know, my thing is that I'm glad that you're bringing this to our attention, that you're following this through, that you're making sure that we understand what I think you understand it. And there's a lot of interesting things in how the Coast Guard, because it is unique. It's a very unique branch of whatever the heck it is. I'm sure it's certainly federal. And it was always kind of, you know, give us what you know about the especially during World War II and so on, how the merchant marines became kind of part of the federal government and the war effort and so on, and then the separation and the recombining and all. You know, give us what you know about that.
Well, the Merchant Marine Act of 1936 established my academy at Kings Point. There are two separate academies. There's the Coast Guard Academy and Kings Point. We're not the same service.
They want them to be the same service. Lieutenant Eric Shine, thank you very much for coming on. It's ltericshine.org. You know, we'll keep you apprised of any developments that the Lieutenant has, and it was always a pleasure to learn more information. Go to the site, freedomsphoenix.com, and you'll get all the contacts and the links and everything to today's show, and you can research all this on your own, and he has a lot of information there. We'll be right back. I'll tell you all about yesterday's show with Inside CENTCOM and the Department of Defense and what we learned and what's coming. This is information that you guys need to know. We'll be right back in just a few minutes after the news.